Okay, hello everyone. I'm Alan Almasy, the practice director for A&D with MillerKnoll, and welcome to the May MillerKnoll Design Perspectives, our monthly series where we talk about all things design with our A&D clients. This month is going to be a conversation with Knoll, Herman Miller, and Muuto on Salone at Milan. There's been a good deal of buzz in the design community about everything that happened in Milan this year. And we thought we would bring to all of you who perhaps missed us at Salone in Milan some highlights from the top three brands that we had represented in Milan. So again, if you think about MillerKnoll as a foundation for who we are, the three brands that were showing in Milan this year were Knoll, Herman Miller, and Muuto, and we have creative leads from each of those brands who will talk about the unique expression of each brand. And so I'd like to invite them to come on camera and take themselves off of mute. And we're going to start with a brief introduction of our representatives of each of the brands, and then we are going to segue into their presentations. So we've got Jonathan, Lean, and Melody. Do you want to take yourself off mute and come on camera, please?
Hi.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So we've got Jonathan from Knoll, Melody representing Herman Miller, and then Lean representing Muuto. So before we get into the presentation, obviously this is an audience made up of architects and interior designers, and I think they would be very curious to know your roles within each of our brands and maybe a little bit about your history in the world of design. So Jonathan, why don't we start with you? Would you like to share with the group what your role is and anything you care to share about your background?
For sure. Thanks, Alan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud
Great.
and clear.
So my name's Jonathan Olivares. I am trained as an industrial designer, but did many collaborations with architects over the years. And I'm currently the design director of Knoll globally for the last year. And I'm spent the last 15 years in LA, and I'm now based in New York City doing this role.
Terrific, terrific. Melody, how about you?
Thanks, Alan. I'm Melody Lee. I lead actually both Herman Miller and Knoll brand and product marketing, but I'm here in my Herman Miller capacity to talk about how we activated that brand in Milan. I am based out of Brooklyn and have been with the company for the last year and 3 months.
Wonderful. Lean, how about you?
Hi, I'm here with you guys from Copenhagen, where I'm responsible for brand and marketing for Muuto, Danish company. And yeah, I've been in this role for the last 10 years. So I know something about the brand, but it's my team that are the creative experts. But I've had the opportunity to talk about the Milan project to you guys.
Wonderful,
nice to be here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, all of you, for joining us. And why don't we plunge right into the Milan experience and bring Salone to life for our audience. And we're going to kick off looking at the Knoll brand and Knoll's representation at Milan. So, Jonathan, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me know. Do you see this design perspectives?
Yes, we do.
Page?
We see the slide.
Okay, great. Yep. Good. So I will, again, thank you, and I'm going to walk you through what Knoll did in Milan. Our presence, the brand's presence, was at the Salone del Mobile at the fairground. We collaborated with, let's see here. We collaborated with the Belgian architecture firm OFFICE, Kirsten Geers, and David Van Severen to do our, it's roughly 7,000 square foot pavilion. And the brief, when I set up the brief, I mean, for those of you who have or have not been to the fair, Salone del Mobile, it's a bit of a sprawling fairground. In my past experiences at that fair, I kind of would always lament the sheer level of waste that would go into a week-long trade fair. So my first part of the brief to David and Kirsten was to that we should have a booth which was made predominantly of recycled materials and would be 100% recyclable. The next aspect of the brief was that we should have a pavilion, an architectural pavilion, not a booth, and that the pavilion should refer to the residential and domestic scale. So our pavilion should be made up of spaces that recall, dining rooms, living rooms, and social spaces that you might find in a home. And then the third aspect of the brief was that we wanted to embrace nature in a way that was compelling and also set a backdrop for some of the outdoor products that the brand was showcasing. So in this image here, you see one of the internal courtyards. Roughly a quarter of our space was dedicated to these desert landscapes. The landscapes had a different kind of lighting than the rest of the fair, or rest of the pavilion. And so the rest of the pavilion itself is lit with cool daylight quality temperature. But the internal courtyards are lit with changing lighting that goes from very warm in the morning to cool in the afternoon, back to almost like a pink sunset quality in the evening. So that's implying in a way that the courtyards are open to the open air. The floor here is made of a recycled concrete terrazzo reclaimed from the building industry. And the aluminum columns and walls are made out of virgin aluminum, but that is 100% recyclable. And the plan for Knoll is to reuse this house, and it is reconfigurable. And so we call it the Casa Knoll, the Knoll house. And the plan is to reuse it and reconfigure it over the coming years. And it is currently being stored at the Fair Builders Warehouse for deployment again next year. And from the outside, you have basically a view where most of the other companies present are showing a 5-meter tall space. And we chose to go low to 3 meters to really show the residential scale and also to have a lot of privacy inside the space. We have mostly enclosed walls with 3 openings. And I just want to quickly talk a little bit about the scale of the furniture, particularly some of the outdoor furniture that you can see here in glimpses. We had a new collection by Piero Lissoni of outdoor sofas, which occupied the central space. And another thing I want to talk about quickly is you may have noticed some of the artwork inside of the pavilion. Knoll has begun a long-term collaboration with Jonathan Mickey, who is a Minneapolis-based conceptual designer. And we're starting to work with him in the spirit that Florence Knoll worked with Harry Bertoia on many sculptures that were present in Knoll's showrooms. And these works occupy a scale that's between, we could say, between the furniture and the architecture. And so you could almost say that they occupy a kind of human scale within the space. And his work, for those of you who aren't familiar, deals with a kind of stability or instability between the viewer and the architecture. So he creates shapes and forms that kind of echo, let's say, the body, but also create a sense of stability within the architecture. So yeah, so if for those of you who might come to Milan next year, I hope you do. We'll have the house. I like to think of the house almost like the Schindler House or the Eames House in Los Angeles, that every time you visit Los Angeles, you make a kind of pilgrimage to see the house again. So it's not that we will reuse the booth, it's actually that we built a house, and this creates a destination for people over the coming years. So thank you very much, and I will stop sharing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. And I should have mentioned earlier for the audience, we will have Q&A at the end of this. So do put your questions in chat, and we will feed those to Jonathan, Melody, and Lean. So Melody, over to you. And
Alan, did you
Miller.
see that someone has their hand up? Did you want to take that question at the end?
I do. You know what?
Okay.
Let's just go ahead and do the questions at the end. And
Okay.
so the person that has their hand up, go ahead and just type your question in chat, and then we'll do all the Q&A at the end.
Okay.
Over to you,
So
Melody.
thank you. Just give me 1 second to pull up the file.
Okay.
I'm happy to be talking to you about Herman Miller's activities in Milan as well. And as you'll see, we took quite a different approach than Knoll, as it should be. And one thing I will emphasize up front, having line of sight into both brands, is that it is very important to us post-merger to ensure that each brand is in the marketplace in a very distinct and differentiated way. And I think Milan will be emblematic of and just the start of that journey in ensuring that these two brands remain true to their histories and their heritages and are very distinct from one another. So let me pull up the file that I have here to show you, which is largely visuals. Alan, can you just confirm for me that that's showing up?
Yep, we see the screen. You might want to go in presentation mode because we also, there you go. That's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So by way of introduction, what we are celebrating in 2023 is 100 years of the Herman Miller brand name. The company was started in 1905 as Star Furniture, but it was in 1923 that DJ Dupree, the founder of Herman Miller, took an investment from his father-in-law, Herman Miller, and renamed the company in his honor. So while Herman Miller himself was not actively involved in the company, it was his patronage and his standards of quality that started the company on the path to where it is today. So in celebration of those 100 years, we use the occasion of the Fiori Salone, or the overall activity around Salone del Mobile, to introduce this, what we call sort of colloquially HM100, with an exhibit called Graphic Design from the Archives. So first, I'll just flip you through a number of images that showcase what this looked like. What you're seeing are images of the exhibit at our Milan showroom in the Brera Design District. Maybe some of you were able to come by and join us for our activities. For those who weren't, I'll play a little bit of a video at the end that will give you a bird's eye view into what this felt like to be in the room. Well, first, I'll talk a little bit about the objectives of this exhibit and just give you a sense of what it looked like. We take the front of the showroom to divide up the exhibit into the 4 graphic design eras of the last 100 years. You're seeing the first 2 eras here, and I'll go into more detail in just a minute. We also took the opportunity to think about how we could refresh the rest of the showroom as well. So you're seeing a little bit of a glimpse of that here as well. From the street level, through the windows, you can see a lot of celebratory elements of the 100 years of Herman Miller, and I'll talk a little bit about that special poster that you see as well. We did hang archival Alexander Gerard environmental enrichment panels from the ceiling, which really had a nice effect on the space as well. Some of our famous Steve Frickholm picnic posters with which you are probably familiar. So let's dive into each of the eras that were featured one wall at a time, and there are only 4, don't worry. The first one is the early modern era, really under the patronage and the direction of Gilbert Rohde, whom DJ Dupree brought in and who really changed the trajectory of Star Furniture into the Herman Miller that is known today. Rohde's architectural training and Bauhaus education really shifted the way in which the company and the brand approached both product design as well as graphic design. And fun fact, it was actually Peggy Ann Rohde, Gilbert Rohde's wife, who designed the marketing materials to match. So a lot of the work you see over on the left side in that image are Peggy's work. About a decade into this era, Irving Harper's lo-fi French curved M, the one for which we're very, very famous today, would come to define the brand identity. And on each of these slides, you'll also see the evolution of our word mark and logo as we move through the eras. I will be sending this to Alan and Evelyn for distribution, so I'm not going to go through each of the pieces that are on each of the walls that represent the eras, but there are just some highlights here that I'll point out. Item 5, as you see, is where the French M from Irving Harper was first featured, for example. Okay. Moving into the mid-century modern era on wall 2, this is really perhaps our most famous era. As outsized mid-century personality George Nelson came to define that period. He thought about not just product design and design partnership, but also about storytelling. And graphics really rose to the forefront under Nelson's leadership. This was a time when Irving Harper continued his work, but also to make Tomoko Miho, collaborators like Gerard, and of course the Eames came to the forefront as well. And you can see the second iteration of our logo there on the slide as well. Here's the listing and the didactics behind all of the elements that were part of this era. One poster I'll point out because it'll be important later when I talk about something special that we're offering this year is number 5 again. This is the Herman Miller collection poster designed by the Swiss designer Armin Hoffmann in 1962. The third era is our experimental era. It was a period of idealism and playfulness. It was heavily Swiss influenced and very Helvetica heavy during this era. John Massey, of course, and his protege Steve Frickholm, who designed the summer picnic series for our corporate picnics, but the posters are anything but corporate, came to typify the graphic identity of the companies through the 1970s. And you can see a sample of that as well as the Helvetica Massey logo on the slide. We had to, of course, feature the sweet corn poster, the number 8 poster. We will continue to release picnic posters available to both our contract and retail channels as well as we highlight this era. On the left, you can see number 1 is the Eames soft pad group poster designed by John Massey in 1970. And that's why I referenced the Armin Hoffmann poster on the last era, because you can see that it's very reminiscent and inspired this one by Massey. Finally, we have our 4th era, the global era in the 1980s and 90s, very well defined by designers like Barbara Loveland and Linda Powell, as well as a system of illustrations with which you are probably all familiar, which is the theory on harmonious workplace environments, living office. And you can also see we move into the era of the meta typeface, defining our word mark in this period as well. This was really the period of time as well that we really increased our international and global footprint, and our graphics really started to reach all corners of the globe. So here you can see a listing behind all of the elements here. I will say this too, we did take this approach of using both archival and reproduction items on the walls. Some of the archival items were a little too fragile to travel to Milan. But we were still able to bring them to life through really well done reproductions. So here's a sampling of things, including our move into the gaming space with number 10, as you'll see there. Again, I can share this so you can take your time with this and peruse this at your own leisure. So one of the exciting things that we're making available to the public as a celebration of 100 years of Herman Miller is that we have done a very limited run of the John Massey poster that I talked about with the Eames Soft Pad Group, which you see in the photo here. We've already sold through a number of the posters, but we still have a few left, and we'll be taking them to Design Days in Chicago in June. Currently, they're on sale for anybody who's based out of the New York area for the NYC by Design period here in the city. So please stop by 251 Park Avenue South if you'd like to purchase one. So what's next for this exhibit? It will be moving to Fulton Market and the Herman Miller showroom during MillerKnoll Design Days and NeoCon. It'll be visible on the first floor where we usually have a retail presence for Herman Miller, but we're excited to be able to take that space and adapt it for this exhibit. So please, if you will be in town, I'd encourage you to stop by, check it out. It'll be a slightly different experience, and also pick up your Massey poster while you're at it. here's a little bit of a sketch so you can see what it's going to look like. But of course, it'll look much better in person. So with that, I'm just going to switch quickly over to a video so you can just get the more 3D experience, and then I will turn it over to Lena. 1 second, please. So this gives you a little bit of a drone view of the exhibit in Milan. That's it. That's all I had. I'll turn it over to Lena. Thank you, and I'll take your questions at the end.
Okay. Thank you, Melody. Lena, over to you.
Thank you. So I'll be pulling up my screen as well. Just a second. I hope you can see Muuto in Milan on your screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for having the opportunity to show a bit about Muuto in Milan. I have assembled a few slides, actually starting out by giving a little snapshot of Muuto's presence in Milan over the last couple of years, because similar to Knoll, we've also had a history of being present at the fair. So the image you see on the far left is actually an example of our fair stand where we've been the last 10 years. And being present in the fair stand for us meant the opportunity to show a bit more a residential and a contract setting. So very efficient way of showing our broad collection. In 2019, we did our first exhibition in the city at Spazio Maiocchi, a wonderful location in the city, and we did that together with Google, where we presented the exhibition A Space for Being, which was 3 different rooms, very differently designed, that you were experiencing as a visitor with a wristband on. Meaning that we had the opportunity to measure your body's response to the 3 very different rooms. So this was an exhibition done together with Johns Hopkins University as well, talking about the concept of neuroaesthetics. So how your body is reacting to the very different interior, color, light, etc. This year, after a little break, COVID break, it's the first time that we were entirely in the city. So we were exhibiting in Brera, and did this with a collab together with H+O Gallery, which is part you see here, this wonderful Milanese courtyard on Via Solferino, and the exhibition was done together with Josephine Hoffmeyer, who was running a company called File Under Pop, which is surface design, so wall painting and tiles, and then together with Elisa Ossino, who's an interior designer, and together they have H+O Gallery. So the idea for us was really to embrace the Milanese apartment, and really build on our shared passion for color and tactile experience. Muuto is always creating a very colorful expression. So this was a great opportunity for us to work with other colleagues that are very passionate about this. So it allowed us to continue to build on this neuroaesthetic dimension, in the sense that, we all know this feeling of when you enter a room, whether it feels nice or it doesn't. And all this is actually your senses that are experiencing the room. So you are reading the environment with all your senses. So not just your eyes, but but also the haptic sense, so the tactile experience, the lighting, the color, the smell, sound, all that. And that was, of course, what we initiated with the Google exhibition, but we continued building on this with different art installation that you see. So all the rooms of the apartment was set against fragments of cult movies. You saw just briefly an example of that on the left side when you enter the apartment, but actually each room had clips of movies against it. And I think for us, what was important with this exhibition was really, if you say compared to what we have done in the previous year, I think this exhibition for us was more on the conceptual part. So it was super important that it needed to be a celebration of color and of aesthetic. I think we all needed that. So it's also, I think, a way for us when we're doing a collaboration. It's maybe not the traditional way that Muuto would show up. This was really a merge of some Italian influence. I think when we had the opportunity to be in this beautiful classical Milanese apartment with terrazzo flooring and beautiful woodwork, it was also important that we adapted to the context. So it was really a way to embrace Muuto being in Milan. And here you see some examples of the different rooms, of course, with all Muuto furniture, lighting, and accessories. And each room really had a different color scheme. And yeah, we even had a kitchen. And in the kitchen, we also had chefs preparing food for us during the exhibit. It was also an opportunity to launch some new products. So what you are seeing here is the mid table that we launched in Milan, designed by TAF architects. And there was even a bedroom as well. So even though it was an apartment, we were kind of trying to balance this more conceptual, aspirational way of experiencing the room with of course the shapes of the furniture and of course also the surface design with the tiles and colors. That was it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you to all of the panelists for sharing. I would encourage the audience, please put your questions in chat for the group, and we're going to open it up to Q&A. I'm going to start with one of my own questions, and Jonathan, this one is for you. I was really taken by the Jonathan Mickey sculpture that you mentioned at Knoll, and your comment about the fact that you saw Knoll having a relationship similar to Harry Bertoia. And I'm wondering, with these sculptures, are these going to be available for sale through Knoll as part of Knoll's collection, or how is that going to work?
No, the one we're basically creating a corporate art collection.
All right.
There has been discussion about creating editions with Jonathan Mickey in the future, so I would say look out for that. But
Okay.
the works you're seeing in the fair we consider it like a corporate art collection.
Okay, super. The next question, Melody, I believe would be for you, and this was in reaction to the Herman Miller 100 exhibition, which I have to say was marvelous. I like the way that you organized it by the 4 time periods and the designers that were working within each of those periods. But Mark is asking if there will be anything published around this, a print piece.
That's a great idea, Mark. We are having some discussions about creating some collateral or zines or something to that effect to help collate all of the great graphic design history that we have. So stay tuned.
Yeah. And I Melody, I was wondering along those lines, will this be, or maybe it already is, on hermanmiller.com or someplace online for for the group
Yeah,
to
so
go to?
we actually have a Matterport that tours the exhibit and actually pulls up all the didactics of all of the different pieces that is available to anybody who'd like to go visit it. So I'm happy to provide that link.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, the next question is for Muuto, and it is about the apartment in Milan, which was absolutely stunning. I have to say, I really love the colors myself. But the question is, will the apartment be open to the public this year? And how might one go about visiting?
Yeah, so the furniture is actually still there and will be there another couple of months. It's not open by public, but it's open by appointment. So if you contact your Muuto responsible, we can definitely figure out a way of visiting before September.
Perfect.
And maybe I can add to that we will be at Design Days in Chicago as well. So it will be a different expression, but also very colorful. It will be a bit more in contract setting, and I will be there as well. So hopefully I'll meet some of you.
Yes, that's a good note. To anybody who's going to be in Chicago, I believe Melody, Lena, and the whole group will be there. So if you see them, make sure you introduce yourselves. So Jamie is asking, or well, first she's saying, which I agree with, she has a lot of respect for the efforts that were made for the recycled environment. So I think hats off to that, Jonathan and team. And then, Jonathan, the question is there anything you can share about Knoll space at Design Days in terms of a spoiler alert or sneak preview?
For sure. It's been a really exciting year working on it. We are, in a way, resetting the brand, the codes of the brand in a way. Like we're really going back to the original foundational DNA and moving that, making kind of decisions and choices in our time based on that DNA. So like one of the things that also Salone del Mobile was really about is this Eliel Saarinen idea about scale. So he would say if you work on a table, you think about it in relationship to the room. If you work on the room, you think about it in relationship to the building. And so Salone del Mobile was about creating a house that we could sort of dream in for future pieces. And Design Days is about kind of taking a new approach to both floors, both Knoll floors, in a similar thought process to say, like, let's start with the plan and the building, and then let's move in. And so I can tell you a few things in Milan, rather for Chicago. We are showing a completely rethought CMF approach for the Knoll brand under a great kind of remaster or edit that we did in collaboration with Salem van der Swag, who's an American textile and color designer based here in New York. And then we've also updated many of Knoll's kind of legacy products with new planning paradigms and new thinking, particularly thinking about A&D led kind of professional service interiors, which are highly specifiable, both in terms of how they're configured and in terms of materials and finishes. So yeah, I'm super excited to give tours. Please reach out. I'll be there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday all day. Happy to meet anyone. So you could request even from Alan, and we could set up time to meet. But yeah, excited for everyone to see it.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. The next question, which I love from Oren, is really for, I think, all three of the brands. And he makes the comment that he's loving how art-driven the three companies are. And if we could please share more about what inspires each of the brands. Melody, do you want to start by what is inspiring at Herman Miller in terms of this art-driven focus?
Well, one thing that I probably should have mentioned as I introduced the graphics exhibit is that I think most of you are aware that we have a bit of a special arrangement with Vitra, in that when we are trying to show something in Europe, the challenge often becomes, how do you tell the story of 100 years of design without showing furniture, right? Because a lot of the parts of our heritage and our past are now part of a modern distribution agreement that allows Vitra to have those rights. And so for us, the graphics exhibit was a way to show that the joy, the color, the tactility of the brand comes through in not just our product design, but also our graphic design as well. So I'm not really directly answering the question that was asked, but I think that in terms of inspiration, Herman Miller has always been known for not just the products that it designs to solve human-centered challenges, but also for a legacy of graphics and identity and advertising and other ephemera that have placed it squarely in the center of culture. So for me, that's quite inspiring on a daily basis.
Perfect, perfect. Jonathan, do you want to perhaps answer for Knoll and where the inspiration is coming from around this art-driven approach? And Jonathan, you're on mute, by the way.
Sorry, we had some construction workers doing something over here. I think one of the most exciting things about this time for Knoll as a brand is that post merger, right? All of a sudden, this brand no longer has to compete with its biggest competitor. It actually can start to tear itself apart and start to focus on what it does best. So there's no more pressure to sort of provide the breadth of solutions that had to compete with, you know, every category against your biggest competitor. Now we can sort of hone in and focus on the core DNA that makes Knoll Knoll. So in Milan, for instance, that's this relationship with the architectural scale. It's the, you know, if you think about the Barcelona pavilion and the Barcelona chair, of really doing pieces that have a strong bond to the architectural environment and pieces that are often done by architects. And that's a very different approach from a kind of industrial design. Melody and I talk all the time about Herman Miller being human-centric and Knoll being environment-centric. So I think, of course, both brands consider the humans and environments, but from a point of departure, Knoll is really looking at space, architectural tendencies, and in a way, what Florence Knoll started was planning, right? So we think of everything in terms of planning and how when you work on that table or chair, you're really thinking about the building or the room that it's going in. So I think Milan was a great example of that, and Chicago will be too. And everything we're doing moving forward is really thinking about that link between the object and its architectural surround.
Perfect. How about Muuto? Lean, how would you respond to that question and the art-driven focus?
Sure. Yes, I think the whole creative community has always been a big inspiration for us. I think when we think about presenting Muuto designs, it's always about creating this full atmosphere that I was talking about before. So that really entails art as a key part of it as well. So we want to create this full room, and that's also music. It can be film, as you saw in Milan, but I mean, any showroom that you will go into and experience Muuto, you will see art on it. Any lifestyle image is really a core part of how we want to, the atmosphere that we would like to create with the design.
Perfect. Thank you. One more question. Is there anything planned for the 3 days of design in Copenhagen? I see you're nodding your head.
Yes, this is our home turf. So of course we are super happy that it has become this international design party with all our colleagues in Copenhagen. So Muuto has its headquarters there, and yeah, all 3 floors will be open, and we will have a big exhibition. We also have a store, and yeah, it will be a lot of fun. So I will be there as well, and then going to Chicago on the Friday. So
Yes,
a lot of
wonderful.
exciting days.
Wonderful. Well, I think looking forward, that's a good note to end the conversation on is so we have the 3 days of design coming up in Copenhagen. We have design days coming up in Chicago, and actually all or most of the MillerKnoll brands will be represented. So in Chicago, you will see at 811 Fulton Market, you'll see Knoll Textiles, Muuto. At 1100 Fulton Market, you will see Herman Miller, Hay, Geiger, Datesweiser, Meharem, and then as well as Not One. And then at the Merchandise Mart, you'll see Edelman as well as Holly Hunt, all represented. So we thank you for joining this month's Design Perspectives, and we look forward to seeing you on our next Design Perspectives, if not sooner, in Chicago. And a special thank you to Jonathan, Melody, and Lean for joining us on the call and sharing the experience from Milan. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.